Hi, everyone. Hi. Thank you for joining this workshop. We have also people online. We will be monitoring chat. You can also connect online if you'd like to see the chat and interact with people there. The Zoom invitation was in Luma. You should have also received those details. Please look at our GitHub. Yeah, on the GitHub, the link that I have shared in the chat, and also it's in our agenda. I will briefly show you, because how our workshop and discussion is going to run later on. We're going to have a couple presentations in the beginning, and then we're going to go into workshop discussion where we have a running doc. So we have slides from today already uploaded, and the Google Doc is linked here. So everyone should have access. You can also look at the questions, because we structure questions and topics that we want to touch base today for this discussion. You can add your notes, you can add your comments as we go, as discuss. And Amy, I know you volunteer. Thank you so much for adding minutes into the Google Doc. Yeah. All right. We're missing Dmitry, but I can start. I'm pretty sure he will be joining shortly. We have a full room of people. Say hello to everybody. As I mentioned, today's workshop, thank you again for coming over and discussing this interesting and important topic of AIBOM. We will provide an update. So Amy will run an update on use cases overview. And then I'll provide some insights into AIBOM research we have at the CP. And then we're going to go through discussion. We'll reserve about 10 minutes at the end. If we're done sooner, yeah, but at least 10 minutes at the end, we're going to time box and just reserve for kind of conclusion, summary discussion. Okay. With that, Amy.
So today, just wanted to give an update of what we've been doing so far with the use cases, seeing some repeat Tiger team members here, and then also seeing a lot of new faces. And I know there's been a lot of questions of like, how do I get involved? Really interested in this. So just want to make sure everyone has the context. And hopefully the takeaway for today is like, we're just starting, like, please get involved. The whole point of this is so that everyone's voice and organization's voice and use cases are heard. So please take this as a very open invitation to get involved with the Tiger team. So yeah, we're just going to talk about progress to date, why this work matters, show you a little bit of a framework around the use cases, and then what's next. So again, zooming out, what we've done, we started with a poll to decide what the Tiger team should focus on. There's a lot that we can talk about, and I know a lot of the conversations I've had are what fields go in AIBOM. Like, everyone wants to answer that question. And I think where the Tiger team ended up is like, let's take a step back before we just talk about the technical implementation and why are we actually doing this. So we decided on starting with use cases, and then we started as kind of like any ideation process, like what are all the things that come to mind. So we started with a list of 15 use cases, went through discussion, prioritization, why does this matter? Are these two basically saying the same thing? Let's consolidate. And then we ended up at 8 use cases. Where we are right now is, defining the use case framework. So what are all the questions that we want to answer for each use case? And then there have been specific people who have volunteered for each use case, right? So 2-3 people to say, I'm going to kind of like help shepherd this. Of course, anyone can contribute, but they're kind of like taking on the ownership of making sure that we complete each use case. And we're also working on a glossary. So, we keep throwing a lot of the same terms out, and someone will say, this happened yesterday, right? In the discussion, someone will say, oh, like, I interpret that very differently, right? So make sure that we're like speaking the same language. And this is just like, people have said like, but tangibly, like, where is this? This is just a picture of the spreadsheet, like all the things that, people on the Tiger team were inputting, initial brainstorming, and then these are the 8 use cases where we ended up at. And then again, so why are we doing this? Why does it matter? Why do we need to start with use cases? The first thing, again, is it focuses the Tiger team efforts, right? There's a lot of experience in the room, on the calls. Everyone kind of is dealing with different things at their organizations, but we want to make sure that we always bring the Tiger team back to Why are we trying to solve this problem? It lets us capture and map out tangible user needs, which is why we need everyone in the room to, voice what they're encountering. It sets the foundation for future work. So use cases was the first project that we're focused on. Next is, this is kind of what Helen is going to walk us through later, is what do we need to do next, right? Are we ready to go ahead and start defining what should be in the actual AI bomb? And then it helps us answer questions such as, again, what should an AI bomb contain? When should it be generated, which Helen will walk through? And what workflows is this going to enable day to day in real life? So this is a list of use cases. I won't go through this. It's the same thing that Helen showed yesterday during the session. We'll obviously make these available. If you go to the notes for the Tiger team meeting, all of this is linked. The actual working document is linked. So what I wanted to spend just a couple minutes going through is showing the use case framework. I think this is important because these are the questions that we're saying we want to answer, right? So as everyone goes off and just kind of gives input where they feel the most comfortable, at least we can say we're trying to answer the same things. So I want to pause here, let everyone kind of take it in and, pose a question, and the answer can be nothing, but pose the question, what's missing, right? So what we've been talking about is objective. So what is this thing supposed to help us do? The problem that this specific use case is trying to solve, so the AI bomb is trying to solve for this use case. What are we trying to solve for? And very importantly, how is this done today, right? Because other people will say, well, I already have a way of doing this. That's not a bad answer. Why isn't that good enough? The personas that this is targeting, benefits, example scenarios. So want to make sure that we're operating off of real world scenarios, and then further consideration. So just curious, opening up to those online, those in the room, what's missing? Anything should be removed? Yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Paige. Two things. First of all, this is a really great slide. I should start by saying this covers a lot of the things that other use cases I've seen don't always cover. Two things that I think come up. One is unique to the working group sort of structure, and the other is just important. One is what other working groups might be connected to the use case. On that list that you had, I remember use cases 2 and 3. I was like, I thought there's others who were talking about this. I've heard it. It's there. So that's let's try to draw lines between them, very clear lines. You're probably working on some aspect. That one, I have clear idea. This other one, I'm not as sure, but it's in there somewhere. Either upon what does this use case depend, or what is this use case blocking? Does that make sense? What are I want to say the word dependency. It's a dependency analysis, but I think you see what I mean. There's a sort of ordering that happens here with these use cases, where some of them are defensive in a way, and some of them are about moving at the speed of innovation. And this is about us keeping pace. And so it's going to be very embedded on product or engineering, and others it's going to be more in compliance and legal. That doesn't mean one is better or stronger. It just orients it a little bit more. And I have a hunch that the use cases will naturally cluster around that too.
Yeah, I think there are a couple other hands.
Yeah, to add to what you're saying, and these kind of frameworks, what I've also seen is a toggle at the bottom for see also or related to, and then a domain that would more or less cover the areas that we are talking about. For example, some of the computer vision work that I did in a nuclear industry or drug manufacturing industry. Those domains require a different kind of bonds than anything else. So probably we don't have to get that deep, but I think
a tag, sort of
tags
a privacy issue, or there's supply chain or AI safety or whatever. There's going to be other.
Correct. So related to, and then domain could be to other, and they would just be names where you can then connect or provide an activity.
You have a question online, Raymond?
Hi, yes.
Unmute yourself, Raymond.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So, one of the things I was actually trying to figure out going through this is there an equivalent to this on the SBOM side that we could reference? Or is this UK framework kind of unique to the AI bomb?
Yeah, I mean, I can take a stab at that, and then others in the room are probably more knowledgeable at that on that front. The question is there something that exists already for the SBOM use cases? I think this was actually on a previous call. I think the answer was like, yeah, of course there is, but there is no standard, right? And I think that was like we can choose to take the exact same thing, which I think we should take the things that worked. But I think the answer was there's no standard that says like this is the way we must go or what we must include in the framework. But yeah,
John Kavanaugh. Yeah, so I would further say that application SBOMs generate application data and application logs, and AI bombs consume application data and other data to create query results. So there are components that have some similarity, but then there's net new components within the AI bomb. My perspective.
yeah, I think it's a fair point, Raymond, to review what worked from the SBOM framework.
So I would argue the UK framework's a little higher level that laid out further action items for measurement performance. It, as I understand it, and I only read it once, does the whole thing, to be honest. But it is not in and of itself an implementation guide of any kind.
I know I'm running up on time. Any last comments on framework? And this doesn't mean the end of the conversation, by the way. Sorry.
Sure. I just want to respond. First comment about, are the other working groups aware of this? So I lead one of the other current working groups, where the group that's collecting SBOM tool attributes. And obviously that is going to be heavily impacted by this because we'll need to consider those attributes as we expand that. I think as a general rule, most of the work groups you take for instinct, having one or two people involved in multiple. Sorry, which the one again.
Can I ask one other question? The glossary that you're working on, will that be published before we get into this detailed type of work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, glossary is part of their work use cases document.
Okay, that'll be available so that if I go off on my own, I will follow at least the glossary definitions that you're.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of going in parallel, right? Because team members are already working on the use cases, so they're parallel efforts at the moment. I'm gonna super quickly speed through this because I'm definitely over time. I want to get to the next slide, but this is just an example or one of the use cases, use case number 2, and just kind of wanted to walk through why this matters. But I think the main takeaway and something that we've talked about in the main entire team calls is how do we make this simple, right? Because if we write a use cases document that is like 20, 30 pages, are people really going to able to like quickly consume what they need to just, know 2 sentences? And so I think that's going to be something really important, really difficult for us to do, because one use case right now is maybe like 6 pages, which is great. Let's start with all the information, but our biggest task is going to be what are the simple takeaways from this that it's usable for the industry. So this is just the vulnerability incident response. Another thing I want to call out here is this is why it's so important that everyone, contributes what they're seeing on their end. What does this mean for them? Because it means something very differently to anyone, right? So this is just an example. I think a lot of us in the room have heard it, but there was a training data set that was found to include child sexual abuse imagery, right? This is a no-no probably for anyone. And so in the terms of AIBOM, what objective is it helping us meet? It's helping identify if and where an organization has risk, enables quicker response. Assumed problem, we're assuming that organizations don't have an easy and automated way to identify risk within their AI models, so that they can act quickly. Then we have, what are we trying to solve for? So here we're making an assumption, and this is what we need to validate. So our assumption is today deployed models are mostly tracked manually, potentially in spreadsheets through manual audits periodically. Personas, this tends to be a very long list. And I think one of the things that we need to make sure is it's good to be expansive and at the same time understand which personas we need to focus on within each use case. Here we have incident response, model developers, legal team, management, and in this case, even law enforcement. And And the last one is actually a dupe, so we will skip that, but just wanted to walk through a super simple example of what we can hopefully get to, and wanted to give a huge thank you to the volunteers. Was there something here? Oh, they can't hear.
Maybe.
Aaron, can you hear?
I could
Yes,
hear,
okay.
I could hear you speaking, Amy. I just couldn't hear the person who was speaking.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. We'll have to repeat the question.
Okay. Oh, I see. All right. Well, sounds good.
I will end it here. Thank you all so much. And then so next steps, we're hoping to finish the deep dive writing, just like initial draft in the next few weeks. Please join the entire team calls. If you can't, that's also okay. The documents are available. Reach out to us. Love for everyone to get involved.
Thank you, Amy, so much. And we will probably repeat it several times today. GitHub is the source of truth where you can find our running minutes, how to connect to our calls, when is the call. Also, it's going to be bi-weekly. So I know sometimes maybe calendar, you have to create your calendar or download calendar. You can always go to the minutes and check when was the last call. 2 weeks from there is the next one. Yeah, so it's just what we had like weekly calls, and we decided that it's a little bit too often, and it's difficult for everybody to maintain that kind of capacity overall. All right. With that, I will move on to the next presentation. Okay, so I will share a little bit of insights from SAP perspective, what we do, how we are approaching the research with the AIBOM. A lot of organizations are coming across this challenge, and the most difficult part is, where do you even start? Yeah, what do you even want to do about this? So I'm going to walk you through how we did approach and what findings we came across. So about the research, let me just check quickly the Zoom. Yeah. All right. So who contributed this research? We have a large team, of course, as part of security, but main contributors into initial is myself, Raya, Ilya, and Slim, who are on my team working through this research. And the research data is based on open source data, but also internal SAP data. When I'm saying data, I don't mean customer data. I just mean the research data that we use for like researching model cards and how do we use them and so on. Yeah, from that perspective. Will the result be shared? Yes, we will share with the community the results, how we approach this, and what is our conclusion at the end. Of course, it's going to be without any SAP-related specifics, but more as a general approach to AIBOM and how we implement it. So the problem of this research, we know that there are two standards, but we need to identify what fields are the most important to start with implementation, and how do we use that? Yeah, so right now it's a lot of unclarity, and this particular work stream also works on that from the use case perspective. But we're trying with this research bridging the gap and identify the minimum fields based on the use cases for model card and AI risk assessments that could contribute in automation of AIBOM. And importance, of course, is because this will, like I said, bridge the gap and in general help the industry in a wider scale, because we will also share how we do this at SAP, and the community can pick up and decide on the next steps as well and evolve from there. So what we did exactly here. So we took different components, different elements, for the AIBOM field mapping. We looked at SPDX and CycloneDX formats. We outline all the fields that are there. We attempted to map a little bit, but we started to focus from SPDX just because it has a larger amount of fields to work with and more kind of use cases around. And we looked at, we separated the generation of AIBOM into two primary aspects based on the risk. Yeah, so we want to generate AIBOM for third-party models that we're absorbing, that we're consuming, as well as proprietary, which would include perhaps also the risk for third-party models. Yeah, so for the time being, we're focusing on the third party because that's the, let's say, low-hanging fruit, and we know that we absolutely have to assess that risk. Yeah, and then we took different kind of use cases. Model card is one of them. Yeah, how can we automate generation of model card in consistent, systematic way so that we use AIBOM for that automation across the whole organization, internally and externally. And then we took three types of AI assessment: for licensing, for legal perspective, and for ethics. Legal is like restricted use of AI. For example, something that will specifically maybe do something against humans, or it will like violate data privacy regulations and so on. Things that we are not allowed to do. We want to make sure that we flush out those use cases. Ethics, of course, it's about fairness. It's about ethical requirements, also in compliance and regulatory side. Nevertheless, it's kind of like a separate assessments that we have at SAP. Yeah, so 3 of them. So we took those 3 use cases and a model card, and we started the exercise of mapping them together, like cross-mapping. What is the coverage from AIBOM fields that potentially? Yes.
If there are any solution providers that were tables upstairs and you left a TV pipe and drain, a mouse, anything, can you please go grab it because they're cleaning up that room now?
Or alternatively, they don't want a TV.
Thank you, Victoria. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, no worries. So, so we start mapping those use cases into the fields, identifying what is the coverage. Yeah, what is the coverage of existing fields that are generally collected for model card. And when we talk about model card, yes, we looked at our internal model card, how our developers are documenting that. But also we look at researches online, and we look at Hugging Face model cards across the industry and identifying the common fields and the most of the used fields that potentially can be used. Yes.
Does the model card just focus on the model, or does it also include training data and weights?
Well, it includes some of the aspects of the data, not necessarily weights, but also aspects of the training. Yeah. Thank you. You're welcome. And so we identified those fields, and I'll show you the coverage, of course, the findings. Similarly, we went through the actual assessments that look like just a human questionnaire document, right? You select like yes, no, or answer different multiple choice or whatever questions. We looked at that and we mapped it into the technical fields. What can we actually collect from AIBOM to automate those kind of assessments perhaps down the road? And okay, I talked about generation. So with all that mapping exercise and the research that we did, we came up with this kind of coverage. So for the model card, out of all SPDX fields, and like I mentioned, we focus on SPDX first, we have about 60% of coverage. So this is a pretty good amount. Whether we need them all or not, it's a different question. But we know that SPDX already covered, like 60% of that is covered. Now, AIBOM for third-party model generation, we found that 40% of SPDX fields could be generated through API connecting to the, let's say, Hugging Face, yeah, and looking through the different mechanisms using Hugging Face APIs, for example, to collect that data and consolidate this information about third-party model. The last assessments of AI, this is a little bit maybe confusing metric, but I'll explain. So 30% of SPDX fields cover our assessments. And actually those 30% of SPDX fields cover 100% of assessments. So that means that we can fully automate those assessments with the AIBOM. So that was one of the key findings that we think is really helpful, and it really shows how valuable AIBOM can be. Yes.
Can I just say this back and see if this is right? It's kind of counter to what it shows on the graph. That third one, that it's only 30%, is actually the most impactful in a sense that you can
Yes.
use AIBOM and it will cover everything for that one. And the other one, the model card, even though a lot of the AIBOM covers it, it still isn't sufficient. Is that right?
Not necessary. And I was actually thinking how to present this graphic, kind of struggling with that a little bit. But this percentage is just a fact about how many SPDX fields are used for certain tasks.
It's not necessarily that here.
Yeah, exactly. Model card can also have less fields. So those are the fields that are used, and they in different combination from model card to model card. There's some consistency, but still there are a lot of fluctuation across different model cards. But it doesn't mean that it's wrong necessarily. It's just what exactly they're focusing on. Yeah, but it's just as a fact you understand that there is a pretty good coverage already on those use cases.
Has anyone done any analysis on model card implementation variation? Haven't seen anything? I know it's underspecified, but okay. Throw that on the to-do pile for grad students.
Helen?
Yes.
I'm also looking at the data card. Have you looked at that, Hugging Face? It's a source of fields.
Not at this moment. Yeah. But model card does include some information about data sets as well. Okay, so with that, we have came up with the minimum fields that we think are necessary to start generation for AIBOM. We shortlisted 7 fields that we think, regardless of the use case, should be the fields that needs to be included in initial AIBOM generation to supply, to at least build a foundation for different use cases like model card, different assessments, and general transparency, inventory of AI systems, and so on. And this is something that we'll also discuss later during our discussion to see what is the general opinion. Is it something that community also agrees with or there's other suggestions on a line and in a room? Yeah. And then my apologies for busy side of the slide on the top. We're really focusing the top side is the MLSecOps activities that are done and could contribute into generation of data for the AIBOM. It's not an exhaustive list. There are many more activities that are happening in MLSecOps, but I listed some of them that could be used. And within different stages, we have identified 3 main points when we think AIBOM should be generated. The first point is when we have planning stage. Yeah. And this is often overlooked. How we would do that? This is when we are consuming different models and we want to assess the risks for models that we use as a foundation or in different dependencies when we start implementation. And it's a very important step to make sure that our development is also can scale with compliance and security from the start when they're consuming the model. So let's say we have already automated, not we have already, but let's say we automate AIBOM and we automate risk assessments. By doing so, they can generate AIBOM and understand whether or not certain models are safe and allowed to use for internal implementation. The second point is after we've done validation and tests. So the training is passed, validation and test is passed, and this is where we want to generate the AIBOM as a before the deployment, that snapshot of AIBOM. And the last one is there is asterisk. We're still debating and we're still thinking about that, continuous AIBOM and how it's really should be affected in a runtime during the operation. This particular line is actually let's say a cut infinity model, just put in a line. And typically, if it's a model that implemented on top of foundation specific use case model, we do go through the cycle. We don't update training in a runtime. If we see that training, it needs to be retrained or it needs to be updated, we go through the cycle to go through the training and then deploy the next version of the model. Yeah. And with that, we have those first 2 snapshots that we generate with the AIBOM. But yeah, still need to see how the last one will work out. Yeah, question?
Just one thought here. In supply chain, sometimes what they do, depending on how complex the product is, they will, in the iterative version of the BOM, they will just track what has changed between versions.
Yes.
Yes, so like operate, you create another version, you run
Yes.
model. You don't just produce a BOM, there is another column that this has changed. You track the delta.
Yes, the tracking, exactly. So you have a new version of the BOM for
Right.
updated.
In the BOM itself, there's like metadata that shows this field has changed, this one has not. In the version.
So that's the version in control, right? But the specific change, I'm not sure. It really depends, right, on what kind of change it was, I think. We haven't deep dived into those use cases. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to add something to it. So we are not looking to create version control for changes in AI over time, right? We want to create inventory of AI BOM dependencies first and see how this use case hold water. And then we will be able to build on top of that foundation, and we'll see what's required. I mean, approaching things with ontology and chronological delta increments creates a lot of complexities eventually. When you need to determine where you are at this moment or when something went wrong, then it can help in this, but eventually we'll have to produce the AIBOM that you're giving it to your downstream customers, right? Or you getting it from your upstream, and then getting 1,000 little pieces of files scattered around might be an issue.
There's the question.
Yeah, a thought, this looks pretty good. And I'm wondering if it is like a cascading framework. For example, if you end up using LangChain in AI, now you're feeding one model, it's outputted into another, and you're cascading these to create. So to me, it almost seems like this complete template could have a superset template, a meta template that also shows whether they are LangChain components or for LLMs or not.
And that's like the relationship part, right?
Yes,
That's what we're gonna use the dependency relationship part.
Okay.
Described all of these things, connection, how one thing led to another, and then all the traceability and transparency along the path or the transitive dependency path of these AI BOMs will show you also which data sets, etc.
Okay.
Yeah.
On your list, there's a lot of activity, guarantee, like a reaction, nodalization. Right. I'm kind of curious how that plays in your model here. A lot of these activities are things that on top of supply chain, I would expect attestations for a lot of these. Does that factor into your thinking about the AIBOM?
When you're saying attestations, what do you?
I'm saying a total attestation.
You're talking about the SBOM attestation, which I mean, what we're using in SBOM.
I'm not talking total attestation.
Yeah, it's not, yeah.
So like being able to create, you have to digital signatures, but a way of tying the hashes for other things. But some of it's biased and it's tested. Okay, how do you prove that that's tested or not? What are the sources of how you show that that's happened in a way that's not easy to do?
Talking about the attestations, each one, so plan third-party model selection. That sort of.
Correct. Which is, I'd say the software side of the house, like how we're going to attestations, code attestations, so that traceability around.
How does that really get that?
I would say because it's giant list of activities that are listed here. How do you prove scope of it?
Well, it's a good question, yeah, and I think it's a general general list of things that we need to consider, but I don't see AIBOM as collecting the proof that it has been tested, but it rather collected the details about training and that it has been validated.
Seems to
Yeah.
be the top of that. The prediction of the activities that happen.
Yeah.
As you're creating your application, and then bottom is a temporal aspect of when we expect the AIBOMs to be created. It's an interesting concept on the attestation. I'm not sure if it's the AIBOM. Maybe that's a collection. I'm not a fan yet, but I like that. It's not unique to AI.
That station part, I think, something that comes further along in the maturity of the approach. So, I mean, if we're looking at crawl, walk, run, we're not even crawling yet. That's it, right? So,
I'm more curious if anyone has stuff.
but yeah, this is the reason why you can join the AIBOM group. It's a good point too.
Thanks, Alan. So I want to just park for discussions for a moment. Let's keep that thought and continue when we're gonna dive into further questions. Yeah. Let me finish this. So we have identified the minimum fields. We have identified potential time in a cycle when we want to generate the AIBOM. And now we need to work towards interoperability of the AIBOM. So looking at model card inventory and transparency of AI systems, integration into MLSecOps processes and consumption, and also looking at specifically third-party model assessment, which would include licensing, ethics, regulatory, and security, and then proprietary, which would include all of the above, plus the third-party model risks assessments. And with that, this research is not completed. This is just insights. It's ongoing research. It's ongoing work that we do at SAP. But there are a few aspects that I think relevant to any organization who are trying to implement the AIBOM within their organization. Is basically start with the identification of the problem, of course, and go through the identifying what is needed. For us, we are looking right now into the coverage of Cyclone DX because we generally generate bombs in Cyclone DX, and we want to also align that with AIBOM. And the next is model card automation, yeah, and with the minimum fields and consistency. But that's not it. You need to roll out your policies and organization to make sure that everybody is aware and requirements are established within your development teams to make sure that it's being followed. The great research is great, but if you don't roll out how it should be done, it's pretty much useless. Yeah, the implementation of it. And 4 is really important. So looking forward to that step when we get there to automate our AI assessments. There's a very huge potential with the AIBOM that we could do that. With that, thank you for your attention for this research. As a next, we're gonna move back to our workshop discussion. So let me bring up the slides. In the meantime, if you have any questions or topics, feel free to speak up.
The audience within SAP, you're going to, and or have you had any surprising uptake or opportunities? So you're
I'm sorry,
I'm just very curious, like it's pretty fantastic that there is a dedicated to this kind of research. Where have you got resonance within your organization around this, or where have you found surprising allies or partners? Your customers.
Who's a business case, the owner?
Oh, security. So we are approaching.
Simple.
I mean, there
Yeah.
could be a world where, I don't know, some team is doing some innovation work. and
Oh, no,
this,
yeah.
or The legal team is like, oh my goodness,
Mhm.
you're here, you're doing this. We don't have to worry about
Okay.
it now. Thank you.
I think I got, yeah. So we initiated research out of security organization, global security organization. We work, we have multiple stakeholders. We have compliance team, licensing team, legal teams. We have also LOBs who are actively implementing AI, so we work with them. And with other stakeholders like toolings team and IT, who will also need to roll out certain updates later on. Landscape, DevOps, toolings team, build infrastructure, and so on. So there are a lot of components that actually have to be involved in implementation of this. Similar like supply chain, like traditional SBOMs, but here we also need to consider AI infrastructure and tool sets. You want to say something?
The AI develops pipeline is going to be very resource extensive to set up for any company today in order to collect and extract all of this data, all of that complexity. All this
That's where it's coming
Oh,
from.
it's like
If
it's
they
gonna be.
recognize that there's efficiencies that you've identified, it's identified, then they would want to.
I mean, AI machine learning holds so much potential, but in order to do it properly, we just now trying to start understanding and not just as inventory what is going to require to get there.
Is it too quiet?
Let's see, who's the chat? Oh, they cannot hear voice in the room.
Okay, can you, Mitch, please speak up first. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Just quick question. So for bias and elements along those lines for testing of quality, is that I assume you're not automating the bias testing. So are you putting in the AIBOM some sort of compliance activity that's occurred, or that you've had an outside group red team it? What does that look like?
So we looked at AIBOM for assessment, let's say for ethics. We didn't look at testing specifically. How do we test ethics, but rather the risk assessment. Yeah, how ethics been implemented, for example, in open source third-party AI, but also internally. Yeah, and based on that, we know that we can use AIBOM as an evidence collection for ethics, and we can use it for automating those assessments. But we haven't really gone into use cases how to, integrate this with the testing part. Can you hear me well? I'm just wondering where the microphone is. It my laptop?
We can hear you. It's when other folks speak in the room that it's hard to hear.
Okay, so it's coming from my microphone. Okay. Okay, I have to repeat the question. Okay. There was one more hand. Is it still on? I don't see it.
I
Okay.
think I answered my own question. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Okay. Then we are running a little bit behind, but I think we're still good. We have good amount of time to discuss the rest of the topics here. So in an idea of the workshop, we want to understand the relationship between the fields, like how it's tracking, and then the summary of the workshop as part of this discussion, and I'll go to the next slide. So there are different elements that we can look at as a Tiger team. And just like we did in the beginning with the use cases, we want to identify what is the most crucial that we want to work on next, what is the important maybe overall for AIBOM to achieve, and then select those kind of achievements and focus on that. I like that what Alan said yesterday at the SBOM-a-rama day one, that if we start to focus on everything, like if we start doing everything at once, it will be very difficult to achieve something. That's why we're scoping and creating a scope, what we're focusing on for specific arbitrary timeline. Yeah, we don't have timeline. Everybody's kind of like volunteering almost themselves here, enthusiasts of AIBOM. But anyway, so right now, as we're finishing AIBOM use cases, the core use cases that we identified, we want to already start thinking, what is the next step? So here I proposed two sections, like two areas. One is technical specifications. We have use cases, we have formats. Now, three things that we need to consider. AIBOM structure, we have some open questions and topics around that. How is AIBOMs going to actually look like as part of the format? And field mapping, which I briefly showcase how we're approaching that at SAP, and we can continue discussing further what makes sense. Standards contribution. So what else I wanted to align with this group is that we have folks who are participating in SPDX and Cyclone DX, but I'm not exactly sure whom to reach out. I am attending SPDX, for example, time to time when I have time. If there's somebody who is consistently attending SPDX, that would be great contact as well. And you don't have to tell me now.
That's Gary.
I'm sorry, Cyclone DX, Cyclone DX, yeah. Yeah, but it would be a great asset for us as a group, because then we're going to have a continuous feedback between the use cases and the standards. If we need to evolve standards, we need to bring back some kind of questions and consistency. On the other side, lifecycle considerations, and that's exactly how we think, when we think AIBOM would be generated. What is the life cycle of AIBOM? Should it be a continuous BOM? Are there any thoughts? What is the general approach across the community here? But what I wanted to make sure that's out of scope is discussion of AIBOM generation tools, such as actual tool. Yeah, so we're not going to discuss tools, but we're only going to discuss the concepts. And at the end, we'll collect minutes and hopefully we'll have enough consensus to perhaps summarize a few points where generally we want to head towards. Yeah. All right. I'm going to have a running document like this that is shared also on a GitHub. I'm just going to show it quickly on a screen, and I'm going to, for online folks and here, and we have a list of topics already outlined, questions kind of to lead the discussion. Yeah, things that we wanted to bring up. So feel free to open this on the site and look at this and comment as we go, or just stay in the room. We'll put the minutes in there, we'll put notes in there so that we can continue this discussion. Okay. Are there any further questions or comments online? Is everybody good there? I'll paste a document link online as well in the chat in the Zoom. Google Doc.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
How thinking you are about regulating compliance like you did? AI transparency is one of the key SAP. And whether that's going to be a big driver and
I think compliance and the regulations are generally a big drivers to focus on certain things, right? Because once there is a rollout, there is nothing else. Like you literally have to work on that compliance, so it suddenly becomes a priority. Yeah. And that's why we have compliance use case as a highest priority use case that we have selected. Yeah. Did you want to say something, Nick?
Yeah, this is where I wonder, as a group, we have the right people that can start to influence and help the various lawmakers around the world who are going to be writing legislation around what's happening here. Because I think we're uniquely positioned to provide insight that they may not have, and all the thought processes, thought patterns that we've gone through, we can help to influence that as it happens. If it's not already happening, or get in the rooms where we need to be. So I think that's where we probably want to work for specific people who already have that level of influence. And, you know, all the same places where you're seeing executive orders and you're seeing CRA, and you're seeing right.
For online participants, the question was around the compliance and if regulations like EU AI Act would influence our prioritization of AIBOM direction. And the response was, like I said, that yes, we already have compliance as a highest priority use case because that's how we should address it. And then there was an addition kind of call for action, I guess. If there anyone who can influence standards and can be the contact for the continuous loop to interact with the standards and back here, right? Yeah, that's the idea. I'm sorry? In people in Europe, yeah. So connect them with us, connect them with this group. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that aligned with their thinking of what they need?
Yeah.
I know you just said but is this going to meet their expectations?
Yeah.
The interesting question is really how we can. Is there a question?
There is a question online. If we can just let Raymond please speak up, and then we'll move on back to the room.
Yes, you can hear. Hello.
We can hear you. Breaking
Perfect.
up a
Okay.
little bit.
Yeah. So I can speak to a little bit of the influencing the regulation side of the house. Actually, the answer is we all can, right? So organizations like NIST, when they put out new guidance, things like the AIRMF and things like that, it's always preceded by a fairly lengthy public consultation process, and they do actually incorporate the feedback coming out of that, and we can all contribute to that. So I suspect, while it might be nice to see if we can get people who are working on those things in our group, we can also go out to them and make sure that they have incorporated things that we've considered. So we can be a little bit proactive about that as well. Happy to expand on this later if folks want to.
Okay, thank you, Raymond. There were some other questions or comments in the room.
I noticed on your list of minimum things that we should include in AIBOM that there was no mention of weights or data source or how large that there were. You talked a little bit about the training data, but will there be a need to identify how much of that data came from open source as opposed to private, or how can we expect to have transparent AI without informing at least like this side of the industry about how the AI is generating those outputs? What are the weights? And
great question. Just to repeat question to the audience here, that on a slide that I have presented with the minimum fields, the question was about the weights and the sources, data sources, and how we can build the transparent AI without having those. Yeah, I did actually have a data source field there as a minimum. But I wanted to say that we propose as a minimum, like as a first step. Yeah, I'm not saying that other fields should not be included. There's always a way to expand and add more, but we want to scope at the bare minimum that we want to have. And weights is more difficult to actually generate and collect that information. So we want to make sure that we can do foundational info first. And similarly, if you think about SBOM has minimum fields, minimum elements that are included, but it's not necessarily covering all the use cases, right? So we need to expand to cover more. So similar idea here. Make sense? Yeah. Okay.
To add something about the weights, there is a there is a question that comes up over and over again about the weights, because this weights, this fine tuning of the models, it's really the IP. And no one, like companies unlikely would be willingly transparently sharing this IP that took them fine tune months or years in some cases. How are we dealing with that part?
And that's an excellent point.
Actually, his point about attestations or there that, hey, like you have done that process and this is where your guidelines as part of the process. That's my attestation. So I don't have to expose it, but I'm attesting to doing it properly.
Yes, and that's been already brought up several times. Yeah. Separating the AIBOM into, let's say, internal proprietary transparency, that when you want to see this information versus what you sharing with the external partners, customers, and the industry overall, right? And similar, what we're absorbing, we want to have enough information, but we have to build some level of trust. And this is where like attestations or even like maybe certifications should come in place, like we have today ISO or SOC, right, for the overall company. Yes, maybe not perfect, it's not foolproof, but at least it goes through specific activities that would attest to that this conforms to the regulatory requirements and certain activities throughout its process, and you can trust this model. And maybe there could be even different levels of trust, like different scenarios of attestations, yeah, for different use cases.
So following that thought, will there be a field initially for the useful life of the model result?
The useful model.
Will there be a stated useful life? Only use this answer for this many points or times, because the model is going to consistently define itself. And the answer may have a time to live or something like that.
I don't have that answer.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe something we need to look at.
The AIBOM doesn't really, it's not for the output of the model, it's for the model. So I don't think you, sure, some output of an AI system might have some time to live. The AIBOM is describing, at least in my opinion, the AI system, not some data output of it. Like you want to be creating a bomb for output. I think, like, so there might be useful time to live in terms of like the application of a model to like problem set, but it's kind of hard to I think it's hard to capture because it's very use case.
So I guess I'm taking on application SBOMs. There's an end of life, stated need that we're beginning to hear more about. So stop using this version of this application at this point in time. So that's what I was just, maybe you're right. Maybe that's an attestation of the model result, not of construction.
Yeah, like we've discovered that this model has some fatal flaw that I think that would be an attribute of the model and not the output.
It could be data set that having some poison data, and now this data is propagates through multiple models from which are.
Well, that was your example, right? The Lion example where you had a trusted training set until you found a deficiency. So you can't use it anymore. So it might be a need at some point.
Revocation.
What's that?
Revocation.
Yes.
Model, like we're doing revocation of certificates, right? Right. So we can revoke a model usage.
But is it actually part of AIBOM documentation?
Well, I mean,
like
revocation, if model is revoked.
I mean,
same as like as in the SBOM, we have software which is deprecated.
Yes.
Right. So software deprecation, it happens. And it's been required by FDA today, as example, for submissions. So I don't see why we wouldn't have like deprecation, revocation of.
So
and yeah, there is no field today.
So
you're right.
I wanted to also kind of scope a little bit discussion, because we can go into a lot of use case, and that's actually great because by going through use cases and try to mapping, we will understand how we can support these use cases, to what extent, and in a lot of sense, things like identifying the risk should be probably based on multiple data that collected from AIBOM. It's not just one field that will highlight you some kind of risk, right? Maybe in some cases it will be, but in a lot of cases, what we see that it's going to be a combination of multiple fields, and then whatever is using AIBOM, the consuming system, would have to have a logic to identify what is the risk. So you need to build that around.
Well, it risks by nature of deciding what you want to do, how you want to do it, right? But the SBOM or AIBOM should just reflect what it is, and then all the risks should be assessed outside of it.
Raymond, you have something to say? Please speak up.
Yes, actually, so end of life issues, I think, are a broader thing that maybe we should be tackling. And actually, I've been putting together a little bit of a proposal for the next meeting, and would welcome input at that point, because there's broader issues of what happens if something goes wrong with a model. Can you trace it through? What happens if a dependent system, because these AI models can be built on top of other things. You've got the same SBOM issue of dependency, disappears or goes out or is no longer usable. So I think this is actually a broader thing that maybe we need to tackle, and maybe we can lean on the SBOM experience. But AIBOM has some unique issues like the data set poisoning we had before. But maybe this is something that we should discuss in more detail at some point later when we've got more time.
We should look at the thing that should it be AI problem or not, right? Because same way as we're not trying to solve bugs in software using SBOMs or document bugs in software in SBOM, probably similar to AI.
Right, but it's more a case though that there are visibility. My understanding with the AIBOM is it's not about how you solve the problem; it's about having visibility into the fact that there may be a problem, right? This is where people seem to be getting a little bit unstuck. Is they're not realizing that there are dependencies, the AI unique dependencies that they may not be aware of, right? I mean, model drift, people are still figuring out that model drift is a thing. From a visibility perspective, I think there's plenty of work to be in scope.
So just before we go into one more question on that side of the table, for just a time check, we have about 45 minutes. Yeah, and we have a lot of topics to discuss. If you've seen the Word document, it's quite extensive. I'm pretty sure we're not going to get through today. What I want to ask, and it feels like there is already kind of discussion more towards the field mapping. Yeah. So what the main purpose of this workshop, I wanted to achieve understanding where everybody thinks should be like the next. And it really feels like the field mapping, it's the next thing that we should do and identify and perhaps develop a strategy how we're going to do this and prioritize the fields. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking back to, staring at the slides and had it up and hearing where the conversation is. So, two thoughts. First, that life cycle that you put up is very good and very powerful. It also felt ahead of where you are. Or it's a good direction. Like eventually to implement this is how you have to think about it. But there's some precursor questions. And that we're hovering right at that intersection of AIBOM use cases, structure, and field map. What I'm hearing in this conversation is a discussion, a very healthy one around prioritization. That if you prioritize these use cases, then you would think about the AIBOM structure this way in field mapping process. Or vice versa, if you think the AIBOM structure should look like this, then these use cases emerge. There's a relationship between all of those. So I think what could be a helpful use of this collective group is some of that prioritization and risk assessment. And one thing that I think one person touched on that hasn't quite come out yet is the different types of models. You'll have a very different conversation if we're talking about text processing versus image versus video versus generative adversarial networks versus multimodal. Those are like crawl, walk, run, basically. No one's really worried about text processing. Kind of worried about image and video analysis. Definitely worried about GANs and multimodal models. And so in terms of like, get too meta about it, but the threat model of what we prioritize, that could help too. Anyway, the point is that it feels like that might be a good use of this collective group, is to do some of that prioritization, either around the use cases or something else. kind of figure out which ones will go in which order.
So just to repeat the summary to the audience here on a call, that it seems like there's kind of consensus that we want to also discuss on AIBOM field mapping because we've been in this area. But life cycle is, we are a little bit not there yet, but the slides that been presented is kind of a good target for discussion later on. But right now, if we focus on the field, so that would be a good use of the time of all the experts in the room and on the phone. Zoom. Okay, to prioritization of topics. Oops, sorry. Those are the use cases that we have. So we already started compliance and vulnerability is the first two. So compliance, we can start with the compliance, for example, and look at how the compliance use case would map into AI fields. I'm pretty sure we're not going to do this today because there are a lot of fields. Yeah, I'm not just going to go field by field. This is something that we can bring in our working groups down the road. But what I wanted to explain, let me bring up my Word document. So if you're following in a work document, I'm in a section field mapping process. And here I put down, for example, we need to define a template. Yeah, we need to define a template, how we want to work through that mapping. The use cases from the compliance scenarios, like do we want to actually go through a specific compliance regulation like EU Act or something else, and just take that and try to see how it's being covered. Yeah, SB 1047 as an example.
Everyone knows what it is. SB 1047. So in California, there is Safe and Secure Innovation for Frontier Artificial Intelligence Model Act. They're going to basically require companies to invest really significant amount of time, effort, and dollars into validation of alignment to the policy and requirements for the developed AI-based systems. So right now in California, it's almost like second chamber passed it. So this is also what really kind of why we prioritize the compliance so high, the hierarchy, because this is likely will be the first major pain of companies, actual adopters, early adopters.
Outside of AI,
Exactly.
this is the first.
Exactly. So that's why we chose the compliance. Hey, like, let's see what fields we need to showcase that we comply with these regulations. And the next course.
Thought on that. It's still, because it's still moving and evolving, sort of hard to peg what it's gonna look like. Exactly. But something like IP and fair usage, even though on this grand scheme, we wouldn't say that's very high priority, there's some precedent, right? It's pretty established if you're in violation. You understand what I'm saying?
In software, I would agree. In AI, I think it's also, it's not crystallized enough yet, right? In the AI space, because, okay, like if your model was trained on data sets.
Isn't that true for all of this? Is that true for all of
Well,
this?
but compliance, again, like the reason this compliance is that like we want people to actually partition AI bombs and compliance is gonna push that, like we will really try to write partition. So if we will create something that is ready for compliance, then most likely the adoption will be higher.
In that sense, the first two feel like action. Like compliance is going to be there. There are vulnerabilities. There have been incidents. There's going to be an incident.
And there is value. There is direct value that you can get out of this effort, right? You're not doing it just because.
Yeah.
So that really, like the first two, they are really kind of, I would say, strong ones that feel. I think everyone would agree with that.
Does anybody disagree?
Yeah, like it's good to hear.
I agree with
yeah.
the logic, but I think to have a compliance model first have to have at least a base example. And then you can apply the example to whatever compliance standards. That's how we do it. We take a risk management framework. And let's take an application SBOM. What are your access controls to get to the application? Well, if I don't have an application to compare to, I can always say, well, I want strong passwords, I want multi-factor authentication. But now I have to I think we came out with a straw man model that would at least, from a glossary perspective, give all of these different views to teach us what we're going to step off and say, this is our sample. And to your point, I agree. Compliance would be a key one, and it follows DevSecOps, right? I mean, you have to get business at the table, the ops at the table, and the security at the table before you start closing.
I just wanted to repeat for people on the line because they may not hear everything. The discussion is around the compliance is the first priority, whether we should focus on compliance specific regulations. So example, Anna posted in the chat and Mitri posted in the chat, SB 1047, the California AI Act as a good example that we can start with. And also there was a comment that perhaps we should decide on more foundational.
Well, an example, just a glossary approach of this is a AIBOM. It's not the final one. It's just a example. But then we apply that to a risk management framework. So, you know, we have to complete some more fields to be compliant with whether it's that SB or the NIST AI model that just came out, or keeping in mind the EU AI model. Right? So there's three that I'm aware of. We have to get alignment within the compliance requirements that you compare it to.
There was a comment?
Yeah, this is a suggestion. I think Helen and Dimitri, after listening to and also pitching in into all the things that are classified in the room so far, I think we could normalize around what you already have as a structure is the MVP of the SBOM working group. So that's MVP, right? Minimum viable product.
Exactly.
So that and then we can have a parking lot for all these things and just capture it as a topic item so that we can actually concentrate on the core competency that we are after.
Okay. This is really what we're after, and we can get there.
And then we can
at some
start
point. It will
taking
be
it
wonderful. Because this is the moment where we start professionally, like we can start generating. We know what we're looking after and where we're looking after, and we'll be looking for ways to retrieve it. And we'll be looking for ways of simply automating that. Right? Once this data flow starts working, then it's depending on top of that. I mean, it's and any software, right?
Classic,
Software is developed part of.
There's Ken, thank you. I'm just going to repeat that there is a suggestion to start with MVP, exactly the minimum fields, that we already proposed as a starting point. And it seems like a general, no disagreement, some agreement, right, in a room that.
actually, let's make it official name. AIBOM MVP. I like it.
Yeah,
I like
okay, AIBOM MVP. And Mitch, please speak up, unmute yourself.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to kind of throw something out there, and I don't know how it'd be received. I joined a little bit late, but you know, I think I like the idea of an AIBOM MVP. My question is, like, have we considered, and is there a group looking at like current use cases of what is out there and how those are being utilized along those lines? I'm just kind of curious because I think starting with like current practical application and then moving to what the roadmap would be to move it towards forward might be a reasonable approach.
Oh, sorry, the question?
Current practical applications.
Like practical application?
Current practical application or use of AIBOMs that are out there, whether complete or incomplete by folks in the field, and what does that say about where they are now, where there's gaps, and what needs, what that roadmap looks like.
Does anyone have practical applications of AIBOM yet?
I have one, but it's very clear. So there is a data set that's so there is a data set that I know that has an issue, and I want quickly to identify which models were trained on this data set and which other models and software applications are using these models as part of their operation. Simple, practical application that I think is very good for anyone who deals with AI to have, right? That's capability that's kind of table stakes.
Sorry, I just came back, and that's where I was going a little bit with the models, like categorizing the models. You mentioned Hugging Face, right? When something comes up, everyone knows it's ubiquitous, but exactly how ubiquitous is precisely the same conversation that we have in SBOM, right? Like we know it's everywhere, but where, how?
Give me an answer now.
Yes.
Not like after a week.
Yeah.
The tons of effort that I spent to find it.
What
I want
class
immediate.
radius is. Yeah.
And this is what SBOM can, that's the major use case. We started with SBOMs. So I think the
Yes.
same thing applies here, right?
Yeah, so discussion for online folks is around practical use cases. So there are some very basic practical use cases that are already available with the AIBOM, just showing the possible vulnerabilities in model or data sets. That's right.
Or just identifying your transitive
And-
dependencies.
And what we at SAP trying to achieve as well is the model card as a practical use case. Yeah, so consistent generation, because this is something that is very inconsistent across the industry. Some do, some don't. But we want to establish this as a consistent generation with AIBOM. Mitch, did that answer your question?
I mean, I know there are practical applications out there, I guess. So what I was trying to say is, if we're trying to determine what fields are necessary and what the minimum viable product might look like, it might be helpful to look at some of those practical applications that are currently in use, determine, how that aligns with where policy is going and the roadmap and overlaps. Is that helpful?
I'm going to read a comment from Adrian. To provide a perspective on the compliance use case, organizations have legal folks that may interpret requirements in a certain way. So trying to come up with a single compliance field mapping might not be an easy thing to workshop. Yeah, I would agree. I think it's quite, yeah.
So if the minimum at Sept decided to cover all use. I think what we may find is each use case and maybe the additional thing. Yeah, so the framework test is, because I think just looking at that, I think 7 is quite simple, right? Based on the experience of the SBOM. I think, I think you find something a lot more to satisfy this.
And
particularly in things like healthcare.
And to your question, I think that this tolerance is addressed by the SBOM today, SBOM standards and languages. And like clear example from the field, like real example. So there is no fields today in the type index to express end of life, end of support, or deprecation. However, there is a properties where you can create your own fields, and then by doing that, you're complying now with the policy of FDA because you have this in your SBOM, which are in machine readable format. So
I say it's that data unrepresented.
So
I think it's all down to data of the forecast.
we need the core. We need the core, and then everyone will build their deviation from the core thing.
Yeah. So MVP sounds like a good approach for start mapping fields, and definitely MVP will be a foundation for the compliance use case. Yeah. Okay, let me see.
Wait, you mentioned that we actually did a poll to determine the priority. Was it like
I remember Amy was mentioning, but we can repeat. Yeah, so how we did come up with the use case priorities. Yeah, we did a poll. So when we were consolidating them, we did a poll about the priority, and compliance came up as a highest priority. Yeah. Okay, so as a next steps, MVP, the template for mapping of MVP, and then we still need to have people who will be representative from one and other standard to help us with the mapping. Yeah, because one of the challenges that we see that, yes, the data can be mapped, but for those who are experts with the standards, it's always better to receive that feedback and help us identify the correct mapping. Some fields are not one-to-one between the standards, and some fields consolidate more information combined from other standards. So as a result of that mapping, actually, we may go back to standards and request for certain changes, break down the fields into more fields, or add new fields and so on. Yeah.
The biggest focus there is interoperability between the standard languages, which is SPDX and CycloDX. So whatever we express in one language, we can translate to another without losing. So it's lossless. It's not losing information in translation. That's the major obstacle that we expecting to see. We have some examples. You can start from these examples and develop them. We have in GitHub the examples, and there's like 5 examples that we did during the RSA workshop, and I'm urging everyone here in the room try to play with them. And if you get to add more data, more fields, just open a pull request.
Okay. Interoperability. You mentioned interoperability. Discuss methodologies for mapping fields. I think we are looking at MVP and then looking perhaps at selected compliance and those fields as a follow-up. Yeah.
Also about the compliance and policy side, we don't have now again anyone who represents that part involved in the group, and that would be great. And I don't know if anyone has any connection that are working on policy. Like I have a connection who I'm utilizing, and it's the same connection as Unicap, right? With open policy, but I mean more local state resources like for this SB 1047. I mean, if anyone knows and can connect this group, we can just interview them just to get kind of some down and feedback of why, what they're expecting, what their concerns. Be great.
I don't know if everybody heard online, but the request is to see if anybody in community network have contacts from, for example, SB 1047, the California AI regulation, and if we can get those people in the forum to help us understand the potential mapping of the fields.
Or what they need, what they're expecting.
What they're expecting as well. Yeah. Ask.
So if you send me an email, I can ask the ITI who they are a member of to find out, because we have a whole AI set of working groups and such, and we have a whole state thing part of ITI. And as a member of that, they should be able to help get some potential context.
Yeah, it's about a business software. You know, this is a really touchdown issue for a lot of tech companies. I think just need lobbying around it. So if you can send that, well, my one caution around that is like, people are gonna have an agenda around presenting what the compliance is. They're gonna present you a very onerous version of it. No one really knows.
It comes
what it
from
is.
the customers who they represent.
Right. So,
Because
I'm
we
saying
get a
they're
lot
pushing
of
back
But
against
you know
it.
what?
They're gonna say, look, it's all these things you're gonna have to comply with. How horrendous is this? There are some things that are, I won't say unimpeachable, but no one's really arguing with them. One aspect, for example, there's the AIBO, and they brought in the limitations of, the interpretation of catastrophic risk are coming from the AI. So if you think about if the model is going to contribute to something that's going to have an adverse effect on critical infrastructure to the effect of X hundred thousands of dollars or millions of lives or something like that, that it needs to be regulated. That's why.
What are the thresholds? But again, I think it's great to listen and bring them to the group so they maybe can even, have like 20 minutes presentation.
Yeah.
Because it's better to know than not know. It's better to know as much as possible, different views and.
That's what I got. Yeah. I'll do this for the group if it's okay. Let's do this outreach. I'll do a like 10-15 minute briefing on it.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Let's
Thank you.
schedule the next AIBOM meeting.
So next AIBOM meeting is on Monday,
Monday, I'll second.
16th. Yeah, but it's bi-weekly, so we'll put some dates and you will see which date would fit. Yeah, it's not emergency, it's not urgent, right? We're still working on a use case, but something good.
By the way, we have like the calendar which you can subscribe now to, so you can just add your calendar and then you'll have it, the meetings. So.
And I know that our list of initial participants evolved, so whoever else is on this group, on this online team is interested, please get in contact with me after this workshop. I'll send out email with calendar. I find that for some people it's the best approach, so they have it. I can do this. So send me your email, helen.oakley@sap.com. Yeah, and then I will email it to you. I'll put my email in the chat also.
Dimitri, what's the timing of this? If that's gonna be our first compliance focus, you have a sense of when it becomes effective?
It's not specifically this one.
Oh.
I mean, there is one in Europe, there is one which is federal level, it's one state level, so.
Well, which one's effective that we want to worry about?
So, yeah, I think it's all of them.
I think actually, if you want to, the ideal is to look at all of them.
Yeah.
And then you get what's the common denominator amongst them.
The MVP.
Yeah, the the CRA, has an aspect to it, definitely tied to SBOMs, but we'll have a knock-on effect here. There's stuff happening at the federal level, and then this California one is going to be precedent. So if you take those three, in a good way, we have the advantage of being able to optimize all of those. In other areas like privacy, we had to kind of say, okay, well, what's Illinois doing? What's California doing? What are they doing? How do you respond to that?
And eventually, like if one of them does that, probably everyone will just copy it with light modifications and.
There was a question about can we sign up? Can we sign up to, or like I will send the calendar invite. You can download the calendar yourself. I don't think there is a sign up like a
Yeah, there's no sign up, you just adding the calendar and.
Sure.
Yeah, it will show up once you add it. The shared calendar, publicly shared.
I will post a link in the chat as well if you are on a Zoom or actually in the minutes. In the minutes on a GitHub, I will post a link. Yeah, so that people can also find it.
There's an idea about this calendar. We might want also to start posting in this calendar all kind of AI related events, conferences.
Yeah, we can, yes.
Brings a little bit more value than just being out for this meeting.
Okay, let me add a note for myself. Here's the Google Doc. Jeez. Yeah, thank you for your participation.
Safe travels.
Yeah.
Yeah, see you on the internet. Right.
All right, so meeting AIBOM. Meetings. Wow. Good. Right. Or- Can you please read the questions while I'm adding? Here. Can you read the question to everybody as
I
well?
think it's less question, it's just John posted. Maybe John want to,
John, did you want to unmute yourself and speak a little bit about your comment on SB 1047? Can't see.
oh, he's not connected to
Okay, so
sound.
might be right. Anyway. Okay, I think we have a pretty good amount of activities that we can do next. I added some notes just to summarize next steps. Consensus on AIBOM MVP, field mapping template, experts from SPDX and Cyclone DX. If anyone knows somebody to invite to the forum, I know SPDX people are already involved, but we need somebody from Cyclone DX.
Steve.
Okay. Okay. Spirit.
Oh, I know. Yeah, but Steve not going to come.
He gets the answer.
He can come to present. I don't think he will have time.
Right here from us.
And then, so we'll follow up on a Cyclone DX. Yeah.
Cyclone DX, it's a little bit more, let's say, so you theoretically, like, someone can just go and open pull request and it will be evaluated.
Oh, similar with
Exactly.
SPDX. Yeah.
Similar, but SPDX.
No, I'll be honest with you. So one that
Yes.
developer you should be aware of.
Sorry, could you repeat?
One of our team members is on site.
Okay, that's
Can we
perfect.
invite him to the group? Perfect.
Okay, so Ian volunteered his team. And to continue the summary, they asked for experts from SB 1047 and other regulatory, and we had a couple participants here who suggested to reach out to the network and bring somebody back, perhaps presenting. And the last, we touch base on the meetings. So you can sign up for the calendar, or you can send an email to me and I will forward the calendar to you. Yeah. Okay. We're almost at the end of our workshop here. I think we had a pretty good discussion and achievement. We don't have to stay until the very, very end, but I wanted to raise a question. Is there anything else you would like to touch base today, since we still have a little bit of time, or rather wrap up and use some networking coffee time?
Move to adjourn. I'll just reiterate the attestation. There are groups that don't have stuff. Yeah, who are actively working on attestation for AI. So more of a front line.
But they're not a Tiger team yet, system, right? They're not external.
Can you introduce maybe us to someone or bring them into the group at some point? So we can also.
I didn't.
Mhm. Okay. All right, just for folks on the call, I know Raymond has a hand, just a second. Ian proposed to reach out to attestation people from OpenSSF and bring them into the room, into AIBOM team. And then Raymond, you have a question or something to say?
Just
Speak
a
up.
very quick one, and this is hello, can you hear me?
You're breaking up,
Hello.
Raymond. We
Okay,
can
can you
hear
hear me
you,
now?
but sometimes you break
Okay,
up.
perfect. Okay, just a really
Yes.
quick comment, and that is about scope. Certainly during this discussion and in the previous meetings, one thing I noticed is that we say I think there seems to be a little bit of fuzziness around what is within scope in terms of AI. For instance, a lot of what we've spoken about doesn't quite work if we're talking about, say, AI for load balancing across power grids. Is that within scope of AIBOM? I'm not saying we need an answer or discussion now, but that's just a comment that I think I noticed that maybe we need to be a bit clearer on, are we just talking about, generative AI based on big data, or are we sort of scoping AIBOM more broadly than that? That's just an observation.
Okay, I will put that a note. A scope of AI type and combinations, I guess.
SBOM types, AI types,
AI
BOM types.
bomb type. Okay.
I might add to that if we have open discussion.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about compliance is going to be less about the models represented by AI bombs and more about how they're being used in practice. We're thinking about, do we provide enough information in the AI bomb itself for others to make a decision about whether it's being used according to additional compliance, which is not really going to be based on the AI bomb itself. I think it's going to be based on the business practices that surround using the AI systems. I'm thinking more into the future a bit. I'm trying to wrap my mind on this concept for the last 20 minutes or so.
I think the AI is going to be part of the decision making for organizations when they comply with various standards about how AI is used in their business. They've got to say that the AI will be part of that process rather than so it's part of that, but the green is also how it is used as well as part of and where they are in the that's all part of this management, not part of
I just wanted to say some folks are starting to drop off online. I just want to say thanks everyone. If you need to go, feel free. We have rather like open discussion here about overall AI bomb.
So to build on what you said, today already Cyclone DX has the consideration data that it can contain about the AIBOMs, which is use cases, rather technical limitation, performance trade-offs, ethical considerations, environmental considerations, and fairness assessment. I mean, if that's what we want to do, the platform, the framework is there. The question is how we capture it. That's the biggest hurdle, right? How do we capture the fairness assessment? Are we doing fairness assessment